more violence before we receive the final result and the final tally?
Yeah, there's a new level of absolute distrust in this American political system, absolute disgust with this Electoral College. 100 million people already voting before today, 3/4 of the total number of voters from 2016. It seems like people who've never voted before are taking this so serious. This Trump fascist, white supremacist existential threat that more people than ever are coming into the voting booths and coming into the streets. There's definitely here in New York City, there's an aura, there's a feeling of fear, of incredible anxiety. The gay community, the Latino community, immigrants feel like anything could happen, as if there's going to be some type of invasion of New York City. All these stores are boarded up, but I think people are just exercising precautions. Whenever an unarmed young black man like William Wallace, or we saw Kevin Peterson killed in Washington yesterday, yes, the community is extremely angry. They're sick of seeing more and more George Floyds, and that's why they rebel. But to just say that these are apolitical riots is ridiculous. This is a historical rebellion against white supremacy, against Trump, against police brutality.
All right, now with social unrest and economic damage from the coronavirus, who do you think American voters will choose for the next 4 years?
Yeah, it's really a toss-up at this point. It's difficult to make those predictions because if you watch Fox News and you read the daily news, you get one diagnosis. And if you listen to CNN and if you listen to NPR, then there's a completely different diagnosis. This country is extremely polarized. Trump has, in a very unprecedented way, at least in modern times, brought white supremacy into vogue and fascism and his rhetoric that he's the greatest thing that's happened to Puerto Rico and the greatest thing that's happened to Black America. One wonders whether he and his own family and could even believe the propaganda that he spews. But people are extremely angry. 1/4 of renters can no longer pay their rent. They're facing eviction. There's an alarming statistic of 56 million Americans who've been hungry in the past few months. Yesterday, every second, there was a new case of COVID-19. So the country's definitely in crisis, which would seem to loom well for Joe Biden against the incumbent, because Trump has to take responsibility for all of these percolating social issues.
You bring up some of the minority vote. Democrats have traditionally gotten the biggest share of minority votes, but during this election race, we've seen some micro-targeting, specifically in Florida, on the Hispanic level, different Hispanic groups, and also increased black support for Donald Trump. Do you think that will have an impact on this election?
This term minorities is curious, too, because when you put together the immigrant vote, the Latino vote, the black vote, women's vote, poor people's vote, the LGBTQ vote, then you have the vast majority, or the 99% of this country. Malcolm X talked a lot about when they call us a minority and they treat us like a minority, we begin to internalize that. So it is interesting to look at the different demographics in the vote. Certainly Latinos and African Americans, the vast, vast majority, dare I say, upwards towards 90%, if not much higher, are voting Democrat because of these issues of police brutality, immigrant rights. A vote against Trump is a vote against this wall of bigotry and xenophobia that Trump has tried to construct along the border with Mexico. So the country is more divided than ever. And definitely Trump is trying to strike a preemptive blow by saying that no matter what happens, he's going to contest the result and he's not going to concede.
That brings up a really good point. Trump says that he will. He's actually said that if he doesn't win, it is fraud. Why has there been so much concern that the democratic process in this election could be undermined? And asking you to go down the rabbit hole just a little bit with me, how likely is the possibility of fraud?
It seems extremely likely that there'll be a constitutional crisis and that the fraud, I mean, the Electoral College is fraud to begin with. If any other country, Cuba, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, used this Electoral College, this antiquated inheritance from the enslavement of millions of Africans, if any other country used the Electoral College, the 82nd Airborne would immediately invade and occupy that country, clamoring for democracy. So it's an incredible double standard that we still still have this outdated system. Trump is going to try every trick up his sleeve. His plan A, of course, is to win the popular vote in the Electoral College because of his ego and his narcissism. His plan B is to use the Supreme Court. He's already said his lawyers are ready to go. And his plan C is to create as much havoc as he can and to call his de facto militias into the streets across this country.
Do you expect any post-election day legal action from either of the two candidates? And harkening back to the 2000 election, will we see any recounts?
Yeah, it sure seems like the Supreme Court is already involved in Nevada, in Pennsylvania. Of course, now with 6 Republican justices or injustices versus the 3 Democratic justices or injustices. Things could go terribly bad there for the Democrats, as they did in 2000 in Florida, and Trump is counting on that. They're already trying to contest votes in Texas. The governor of Texas has done everything to make sure there's not enough ballot boxes in the lead up. Still, it was really heroic that 100 million people, 3/4 of the total vote in 2016, already participated. So that indifference that we felt in 2016 when over 100 million people didn't participate. You had Trump with you had Hillary Clinton with 64 million votes, Trump in the range of just over 60 million, but then 100 million because of their indifference and their apathy and their absolute disgust with this system who didn't even participate. It doesn't seem like that's going to repeat itself this year.
All right. Daniel Shaw, professor of Latin American and Caribbean Studies at the City University of New York. Interesting to hear your thoughts and good conversation on this election day. Sorry about the confusion at the beginning, little technical issues on my part. But thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Sean.
All right. According to